this life ain't fair. And I know that you're going nowhere. Well, don't blame me for what you've done, 'cause I know that you are having fun.
Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast, exposing the real estate secrets your agent doesn't want you to know. Here's your host, Tom Clary.
Well, don't you just walk away. That's when I'll say, well, don't give
Welcome to the Clarified Realty Podcast. I'm Tom Clary. I'm a real estate agent licensed here in Los Angeles, California. More specifically, the lovely city of Calabasas. Thanks again for coming back. We're recording this just after the new year. It's so good to be back. I'm like, 2016, get behind me, you monster, you. I'm like crazy jazzed about the new year. We've got a whole new 365 ahead of us, or the 359 now, actually, as of this recording. But what the heck? And I have a feeling that 2017 is going to be just remarkable. I don't know why. It's just a gut feeling, but I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to give you guys lots of helpful information and do what we can to get you out there and on the move. We want to get you up off that couch and get you going, whether it's to buy a house or sell your house, either one. I really hope this is the year where you put your fear behind you and really get started, because Lord only knows we're going to be here giving you the absolute best information we can with the absolute best people in the business giving advice. So you just need to take action on it and get the ball rolling. I'm so excited and hyper jazzed about this year. Really, no BS. Ron, how you doing? How you feeling about this year?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for asking.
What do you think about 2017, huh?
I'm excited for it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and, we're already starting to get a nice little folling on our podcast.
Nice to have you guys on board, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of the new year, do we have any new news for the new year?
We do, actually. There was an article that came through on Bloomberg, and with Bloomberg, they had an article. The title is "Wall Street: America's New Landlord Kicks Tenants to the Curb."
Yeah. That sounds a bit dastardly.
If you think about it, I mean, if you think about the coldest, most impersonal company that is out there, are hedge funds and private equity firms. So imagine your landlord being Richard Gere before he turned into a nice guy in Pretty Woman.
That is the weirdest comparison I've ever heard in my entire life.
I was thinking about it. Well, you're welcome.
Congratulations.
You are very welcome, because I was thinking about it. I mean, you think about people that are in that type of environment and that type of business, and that scene where they had the grandson and then the grandfather, and he's like, "You're not breaking up my business." That is what it reminds me of when you think of these larger hedge funds and institutional investors. And it's interesting because there was a study that was done, and what they're saying is that these hedge funds like Colony Capital, like America's Homes for Rent,
Blackstone.
Yeah. So these huge companies, what they did was they bought in 2008. They bought at the bottom.
Right. They were buying the heck out of the market.
And these are single-family homes, right?
And by the way, this is, I think, a point that everybody should pay attention to here. When everybody's running away from the fiery building, people are running in and making all sorts of money. And so basically, you're going to be at the mercy, if you're a renter, of these people that Ron's talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a friend that, he used to be in this business, and what they would do is they would go to these auctions, and they would buy these homes at record bottom prices. Yeah. And once they had it in their portfolio and they started to realize the gains because prices started to go up, they refinanced, took out the equity at record low prices, and they were able to add that to their coffers.
Right.
So these institutions, they became landlords, and they put up nice glossy names and
to kind of hide behind a facade of magnanimousness.
That's right. So it looked like you were renting from a regular mom and pop, but actually you were renting from Colony Capital or Blackstone or these huge companies. Well, what's happening is the study that came out, they said that one in particular, it says American Homes for Rent, one of the nation's largest operators, filed eviction notices for a quarter of its houses, compared with an average 15% of all single-family home landlords. So what that means is they're almost twice as likely to kick you out of that home. Yeah. And a big reason is because, think about it. So we talked about they buy it at the bottom and it's gone up. Well, rates are going up now, right?
Yes,
so if you refinance, it's going to cost more for actually paying that extra mortgage payment, if you will. Also, home prices. So hedge funds, they go in and they look at positions. So they buy it at, let's just think of it as a stock. They buy the stock at $20, right? And then it reached $50. They reached their threshold.
Yeah.
Now they're unwinding positions.
Time to get out of it.
It's time to get out of it. And that's what the hedge funds are doing.
Yeah.
But you can't, it's not a transaction like a stock,
right,
where you're unwinding a position. There are people that are associated with it.
Exactly.
And just on a final note, what I actually watched the video that was associated with it. It's just a very interesting article. What he was saying was, we see millennials as our next group of target markets because they're getting into their mid-30s, and even though they may qualify to buy a home, they don't think they can.
Right.
So therefore, we're going to rent to them.
Right. They're going to keep on renting. Well,
they're going to keep on renting to them.
And
he said it's good for us, but too bad for them. And they actually said that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that it's also the element of what we've discussed before on the podcast, and I keep on coming back to it, is that these millennials saw their families lose their homes. They know that fear. They went through it with their parents. They saw it through their parents' eyes. And so of course they think they can't do it, right? When in reality, we know, Ron and I know, you could probably definitely qualify for something. Every time I talk to someone who's like 35 or under, it's like, oh, I'd love to move into a house, but I just can't. And it feeds into this whole culture of what I feel is going to be a society of haves and have-nots. There's going to be the haves, who are the real property owners. They're the ones, and there's going to be everybody else who rents from them. And if you don't take real inventory about where your position is, and go, you know what, maybe I can hop on the train here. I can hop on the train here because this is the time to do it, because interest rates are starting to go up. House prices are still climbing. If you're going to jump on, seriously, this is the perfect time. There are times you're going to have to later, but this is a time where if you chose to do it, would be a wise time.
Yeah, there was a social media post that a couple of folks in the real estate industry posted right at the beginning of the year, and they were saying that you're making a big mistake if you do not involve home ownership in your overall strategy of building wealth.
Right.
A home is an escalator versus taking the stairs.
Yep. Right?
Absolutely. It's going to help propel you to your overall
It helps move you along. And the other thing that I want to talk about in terms of this and the difference between the haves and the have-nots here is the key thing that Ron was talking about. He put it in pretty woman terms, which I didn't think that I would ever make that comparison in my life. But
you're welcome.
Yeah, I guess. But here's what it is. Imagine if your landlord was your cable company, right? Basically, you have these enormous hedge funds that relatively have not a monopoly, right? But they hold a huge share of the rentals that are out there, and they're just companies. They're not a mom and pop. Some of them are. Some rentals are, investors who happen to own a home there or a home there. But for the most part, there's these enormous investment companies. And you're going to try to talk to them and get some compassion and empathy from them to get you to maybe stay around for another month, or maybe stay around for another. Yeah, listen, I'm just trying to get some things together. Hey, look, I've got this coming in, this coming in. No, this is a cold company that has bottom lines that they need to hit, and you are not part of it.
That's right, and it's what I see it as. I see it as a passing fad, right? So they saw an opportunity. They, instead of dumping all their money into the stock market, they saw, hey, let's go to American real estate. It's at the lowest levels we've ever seen. It hit all their markers, and they got in, and now it looks like they're starting to get out. Once it's not a profitable market for them, or it's too difficult, or it's just not going to satisfy their shareholders, they're out of it.
Yeah.
They're out of it. They're not trying to make it a long-term game
Right.
at all. They're just getting in, they get out.
Right. And by the way, as I always, when there's any of this kind of encouragement for you guys to start making moves, I always want to give this disclaimer. This narrative is not about getting you guys to come and buy a house. That's not it. We're trying to give you guys the best information about the market, and you guys need to start making wise decisions and taking action. Right? So, buy a house, don't buy a house, it doesn't matter to me, right? Because I'm going to take advantage of whatever opportunity is. Ron's going to take advantage of whatever opportunity is. The trick is for you guys to be learned enough about the market to make decisions that are good for you. And that's why we're bringing this up. So I want to just basically, I want to always tell you that disclaimer so that you guys understand that we're not just trying to pitch you guys a rainbow and a pot of gold at the end of it. We're telling you that this is really happening out there, and how you use that information is up to you. So, all right, well, let's move on. So today's topic and what we're going to be focusing on is really the close relationship between buying a house and how it relates to being in a good school district. It's really interesting. Before I became a real estate agent, I hadn't really become a father yet. It's sort of happened around the same time. So I'd always understood the importance of being in a quote-unquote good school district or near a good school intellectually, right? Like theoretically. Sure, you want to be near a good school. That makes sense, right? Hey, I'd like my kids to go to a good school too, right? Sure, but and make sure it has a pool and that it has a big front lawn or it's near a shopping mall and restaurants, blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't until I actually became an agent and a father that I really started to understand the absolute priority that families put towards getting a home in a good school district. For them, it's the difference between their kids starting from what they see as a disadvantage to really having a chance to get a leg up in life. I would literally see families come into an open house like just like a tiny beat up fixer or something. It was just barely in their price range, and they'd be like, "We don't care. Is it in X school district?" Because if it is, we're taking it. I mean, it's incredible the amount of weight that was put on this one single aspect of home purchase. Whenever I had a client that was looking for a house and had a family, one of the criteria they would always inevitably ask for me would be, right after, it needs this many beds and this many baths, and it has to be in a really good school district every single time. And that's the case even if you don't have kids. And imagine how important it's going to be when you go to resell your house, what school district it's in. So, but just so you know, this leads to a very sticky situation for real estate agents and why it's so important for buyers to do their own research or talk to a trusted advisor like my guest today. And here's the deal. We're not really allowed to discuss whether a house is in a good school district or not. You're probably like, what's that? I thought that's what real estate agents do, right? But there's actually a very good reason for this, and this can really show you whether or not you're working with an ethical real estate agent here. See, there's too much room for potential discrimination here. There have been quite a few disreputable agents out there that were caught quote unquote steering. That's what the term is. It's actually called steering. Caucasian buyers away from predominantly non-Caucasian neighborhoods by saying, oh, you don't want to go there, the schools are bad, like, a code. So basically, for us to take a stand on the state of a school district can actually set us up for, accusations of discrimination and violating fair housing practices. So we're really not supposed to go there. So if you have an agent that doesn't have a problem with this, then you can either make the conclusion that they either don't know about this, or ethics aren't exactly their strong suit. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Plus what we define as good may not be what you define as good. So now if you say, okay, I want my kid to go to X school, can you find me a house in there? That's a much different story, right? Because that gives me something I can definitely go, oh, they want that school, I can find something around it. But it's not necessarily as cut and dried as that sounds, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the podcast. But that's why if this is a priority for you buying a house, you need to do your own research. But you should also talk to experts who know the schools in an area other than your agent. And speaking of which, I am lucky to have our guest here today, and I think she can bring a really amazing perspective to this conversation and some really helpful advice to everybody that's out there with kids looking for a new house to buy. Evelyn Alexander is a college counselor and founder of Magellan College Counseling. She's actually a certified educational planner.
She is.
Or CEP.
I am.
One of only 27 in the state of California, I've heard.
It is true.
And I'll ask her more about that in a second. But when it comes to a holistic strategy or plan for getting your kids into college and into higher education that they, that they want to choose, she's an expert in every sense of the word. And I'm so lucky to have her here today. Hi, how you doing, Evelyn?
I'm great, Tom. How are you?
Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about. Let's first start off by just kind of going into what exactly are the services that you specifically provide.
Right.
And we'll start with Aaron. Like, what is a CEP? What do you give us a little background?
Sure. So I founded Magellan in 2011. So we're in our 6th year. We have 6 counselors. We have 5 of us here in the Los Angeles area and 1 in Boston. I forgot to mention, I speak very quickly. Maybe I'll try to fix that.
Ease down. We got a few minutes.
I know.
We're all right.
It's going to be a 25-minute podcast.
This will be one of the shortest ones we ever do.
There we go. Just like me. So what we do is we help families go through the college search and application process. And I'm very intentional in calling it the college search and application process because a lot of people jump right into phase 2 and throw together a list and apply to colleges.
Right.
And those are the people that end up the most disappointed.
Yeah.
So we start way earlier than the applications start. We start with people even in 9th or 10th grade. We have our first conversation with them. And frankly, I know we're going to talk about high school choice today.
Just kind of, yeah.
We start talking to people in 8th grade when they're deciding if they have a choice what high school
and that was,
to.
we're going to skip ahead a little bit here because since we're bringing it up now, timelines in terms of when it's really good to start thinking about, I really need to have my kid in this school or that school in order to get them to where we're targeting.
Yeah. It makes me really sad when I see people like fighting to get on the waiting list of kindergarten when they're pregnant.
Yeah, right?
Really sad. I mean, your kids are little, right? Are you?
They're small, yeah.
So you're on a high school list, right?
I know.
No. So, and it makes me really sad that there's the frenzy that college admissions has become has kind of filtered down to the high school and middle school level.
Right.
I had dinner actually with a friend yesterday who has 1 in elementary school and 1 in middle school, and she's worried about what high school they're going to go to. Now, high school choice can be important. It depends on what kind of learner your child is. It depends if they have special needs. To be honest with you, I think it's not the most important thing. And the reason I think that is if you end up in a high school that isn't really a super duper great fit, there's other things you can do that kind of fill in the gaps.
That's another question I wanted to get to as well. But let's move, just to give us a little more background though.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I know that you have quite a bit of history in terms of college admissions.
Yep.
You were with Johns Hopkins admissions for a while, correct?
So I was never officially in the admissions office, but I got my undergraduate degree from Hopkins, and I was a volunteer in their admissions office for 15 years. I interviewed students, and given that it's on the East Coast and we're here in LA, they have people who travel, but they're not here all the time. And so anytime that they needed something to go on in LA, a college fair or someone to visit a high school, I just sort of said, hey, I'll do that.
Got it.
So yeah, I interviewed students for 15 years. And that's part of why I decided to do what I do, is that I watched the stress level for these kids, 16, 17 years old.
Absolutely.
Ratchet up to this awful level.
I have older brothers, and one of the brothers had a son and a daughter, and watching the pressure, and this was 10 years ago, right? Where it was really the birth of the helicopter parents and the real kind of holding kids to this standard that I literally scratched my head. And I remember my dad used to pick their grandfather, my dad, used to pick them up from school, and he couldn't even lift their book bags because they were so, and they were in fifth grade.
And kids wheel their backpacks.
Yeah.
Remember we used to put our backpacks on our backs?
Oh, yeah.
They wheel them around now.
Yeah. And half of it was toys and
it's crazy,
right.
Right.
So, okay, so By the way, and this is one of those kind of weird kind of things I was thinking about when I was prepping for this, is that there are hundreds of colleges all around the country, and how do you like keep track of all that criteria that like all the ones are going to be looking for and all that?
Well, there's 2,200 four-year colleges in the U.S., and I have personally...
I guess I was a little off.
Well, it's close.
Yeah.
And if you count community colleges, two-year colleges, we're at like 4,000.
Wow.
And community college is a good choice for some kids. I actually just did a blog a couple weeks ago. Is community college a good choice? So for some families, it's the right place to start. But 2,200 four-year colleges, my team and I spend a ton of time on the road. I was just saying to Ron, I'm getting on a plane for Atlanta in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
And by the way, I wanted to, while we're talking about planes, you're a licensed pilot.
I am a licensed pilot. I have not flown.
Do you ever fly to the colleges for the tours?
No, I haven't flown in a couple years. My dad was a pilot, is a pilot, and so I sort of grew up flying, and it's a fun hobby. I sort of like did it to say I've accomplished that, and it's not something that
I could totally see you though, like we got a tour that we have to do at Berkeley. All right,
off we go.
Go to Van Nuys Airport.
Right, that's where I flew out.
There you go.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
No, so we visit a lot of colleges. I'm actually going to UC Santa Cruz Monday.
Okay.
Literally just for the day.
Wow.
We each probably visit between 15 and 25 colleges a year, because you can't help families go through this process and students go through this process if you don't know what's out there. And part of our approach is, California families think, and most families in the country think, that their in-state public flagship university is going to be the best financial deal for them. And in reality, that is almost not always, almost never true, is the truth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, people frequently, now the biggest stressor in college is really the price at this point.
Absolutely. With, college debt being what it is.
Absolutely.
And saddling your child with something where they can't even buy a house later on because they've got $100,000 worth of debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, the truth is, I would love to help families, use their college education in a way that isn't going to saddle them with debt, so that they can make the good choices and not be renting at 35.
Right.
And
exactly.
instead be buying a house with you.
Right. Great. So let's kind of steer this conversation, speaking of steering, towards more a conversation of real estate and how it relates to choosing a good school, that can set yourself. Look, we're not talking about the kindergartens, but a high school 8th grade, you say, that will set your child up for the best future in terms, or the best ability to make a choice they want to make later on in life. So let's go through very quickly the differences, and qualitative as well as quantitative difference between a public school, a charter school, and a private school. Is there pros and cons of each? How do you feel?
And let me also throw magnet schools into the mix.
Right.
Okay, so public, charter, and magnet schools are all public.
Right.
The difference is really the governance. And for a magnet school, the difference is the focus. So a magnet school has a specific focus in a specific academic area.
Right.
So if you have a kid who is a super duper science math kid, you might want to go look for a science or medical magnet that's close to you.
What do they provide that's more than any of the others?
They're just going to provide a more enriching academic experience.
Is it broken down into like school hours? Like, you're either going to be 20% more science classes, or like it's sort of like that.
Probably. I'll give you an example. LA County High School for the Arts, LACSA, is it's a public school within LA Unified. You can go from anywhere in the district. So I've had kids who drive from Calabasas to it's on the campus of Cal State LA.
Right.
So it is not convenient.
I only know that because I was a drama nerd.
There you go. And so what they do, the kids at LACSA do, you're either drama or dance or music, and you basically spend 4 hours a day doing one of those three things.
Right.
And you spend the other maybe 2 hours or 3 hours in your academic day doing your academics.
Right.
So it's just very, very concentrated on those areas.
So magnets. So that takes magnet. Let's put that off the side now. Okay. So now we've got charter. Now there are different types of charters, correct?
There are, again, it's a governance issue. So there's charters that are run by a company.
Got it.
like KIPP or Green Dot. And there's also charters that are more parent governance. So I'm out in the West Valley where we've got El Camino charter.
Right.
There's also Granada Hills charter, and those are basically run by a parent board.
Got it.
And the parent board, it's still part of the public school system. It still gets public funding.
Right.
But the parent board has control over hiring and firing.
Is there a pro or con to that?
If you are a parent who is really, really hands-on and you have some specific talents, like if you're a CPA, they're going to love you on their board.
Sure.
But if you're really, really interested in having a lot to say about your child's education.
So it's more about having more parent involvement than an actual company, basically making that kind of. It's a government-backed entity, but there's a company that's kind of driving it.
Well, right, and I guess I would say if you're in an area where you're not thrilled with the public school and you're okay and you don't have the time to invest in sitting on a board and going to meetings however often they go, and you're willing to let a company that with an absolutely proven track record, run that school, then you might look for a Green Dot or a KIPP school.
Right. Is there a misconception that just by having the word charter in front of it or behind it, that it is better than any like a regular public school? That's
a really good question. From the college's perspective,
yes, and that's key too.
I don't think there's any difference.
So no difference, whether it was a parent governed or a company governed.
No, absolutely no
Got
difference.
it.
Yeah.
So okay, so then we have. So is there any other pro and con in terms of charter compared to public?
So public schools are generally large. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention, I used to volunteer at a charter school in the Valley. It's called High Tech Los Angeles.
Okay.
It's on the campus of, so actually this is a great example. It's on the campus of Birmingham.
Oh,
so
I used to go to Birmingham. All right, there you go.
Birmingham is big public school.
Right.
The college counselors at Birmingham have 500 to 600 students that they're each responsible for.
Right.
And in California, the average number of students that a public school counselor is responsible for is 822.
Wow.
So that's the downside of public schools.
Definitely.
Now, the upside of public schools is they're free.
Yeah.
Right? So people ask me all the time, should we, I won't mention private school names, but should we pay for private school? I went to a private school in the Valley. Should we spend the money to go to private school? The answer basically to every question you'll ever ask me is, it depends.
Right.
It depends. What are your child's needs?
Right.
If you think your child needs, 20 classes with 20 students max,
right.
you shouldn't send them to a public school.
Right.
That's not going to be a great environment for them.
Right.
So you have to kind of look at, and each of your children might be different.
Right.
Right. So.
And by the way, I think this is a good time to kind of inject a little other kind of facet of this that I think is kind of interesting. Doing research for this, and I'd always known this, but to have it kind of put in black and white numbers, there's this, people kind of make the choice. They have to make a choice whether do I take a cheaper house in a better school district. Right. Or cheaper house in a bad school district, right? Because that's what, again, then pay for private school. Right? Because that's my school is priority,
yep.
Right? Or am I better off buying a house in a more expensive neighborhood,
right.
But then have public school that is a better public school,
right?
So basically, I was looking at Trulia.com says tuition rates vary widely, but the average tuition cost is $10,940, which is the same as $912 per month in mortgage payments.
Wait, is that in the LA area?
I think this is a national average.
I would say in LA it's probably higher.
I would agree with you about that.
Yeah.
But I think the number is still, the ratio is still kind of what we're talking about here. And a homeowner with a $1,326 mortgage payment, which of course it's 3 times as much here in LA or whatever, on a $300,000 house who is also paying the $912 per month average tuition, could in effect afford a $520,000 house with public school education in a better quality school district.
Well, it makes sense because you're only using a high school for 4 years or 8 if you have kids, but you're hopefully living in your house for longer than that,
exactly.
And paying the mortgage longer than that.
Right. And it's all about the investment, which this is, and it's also why it's such a personal thing that you need to investigate yourself, because there's lots of questions here.
Right.
Do I send them to a private school that is better in this, cheaper neighborhood because I can afford the cheaper neighborhood and the private school? Or do I, choose to but what's the better? What are you going to get the better return on your investment later on? If you think that market is going to start growing, and that one that was $300,000, not the $500,000 one, you're like, I think that Highland Park is going to be one day just booming. By the way, it turned out that way, right? But if you caught it $300,000 and you were going to a private school, you're a happy camper, right? Or you make the decision to go to a house that's in, Oak Park or,
right.
Calabasas or whatever.
And the person I know who lives in Highland Park sends both of her children to private school.
There you go. See? Exactly. Because I don't think the schools have necessarily caught up with.
So.
Yeah.
Something I saw in Business Insider today, you could hedge your bets as well, right?
Okay.
So if you're looking at the overall ROI of your child's future, and as parents, being good parents and getting reimbursed, if you will, Evan Spiegel from Snapchat.
Yeah.
Right. So he grew up in the Palisades, and Pali High is a pretty great school and a great school district. But they sent him to Crossroads in Santa Monica.
Wow.
So.
And by the way, Crossroads in Santa Monica, as I understand it, had a number of huge CEOs come out of it.
Jonah Hill,
Yeah.
and they had a lot of celebrities and a
Yeah.
lot of people that went on to Stanford and founded companies.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
That. Yeah.
And there's almost like a Crossroads mafia. It's where everybody kind of. Look, this is all about.
I'm laughing because there's a public school in LA called LACES, Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies, and I call them the LACES Mafia.
LACES Mafia, exactly, right?
Nice.
Because it's basically it's almost like the alumni from Emory or something like that, where everybody knows everybody. And I'm looking at Ron.
I have a lot of friends that are part of the private schools, and their networking events, if you will, they're high school alums.
Yeah.
But it's all a very strong, tight knit group.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be about the 10-year reunion every single, it can be, monthly.
No, it's all about engagement.
Exactly. So, all right, well, let's go into, now we've kind of we did talk about charter, we talked about public, we talked about private, and also magnet.
Yep.
Is there any kind of qualitative difference between them necessarily, or?
Well, the counselor ratio is.
And by the way, that's something that I hadn't even, when I was
roof,
thinking about this, I hadn't taken, we talk about, well, actually, let's move on to what.
Well, let me just throw one thing out. And so what I would say is to people who make the choice to buy in the neighborhood where they can send their kids to a public school, and that number, the counselor ratio number freaks them out, I say, you know what? Our services cost way less than 4 years of a private school. So then you get the private school counselor ratio because I'm there holding your hand.
Because and we're and let me just move. We're going to move into basically how do you basically, when you're going in to look at a school district, what's a good school district? It seems like a very basic question.
Yeah.
And I had thought about teacher to student ratio, right? Because that's
class size.
Class size, exactly, right? And I hadn't even considered the idea of counselor too, which makes total sense.
Well, when your kids get to the point of applying to college, and they absolutely need an appointment with their counselor, you'll understand.
Right, exactly.
And people who are listening who've been through that totally understand when, I've had clients where, December of their senior year is the very first time they've seen their counselor. This is a problem. If you don't have someone like me holding your hand and telling you what you need, that's a really bad time to get started with your college search.
Right.
So that's when it comes in.
If people do find themselves in a quote unquote bad school district, what would you recommend in terms of okay, I can only afford to get here and I can't afford private school.
Sure.
All right, what do we do?
Well, I appreciated what you were saying before you introduced me, which was that you're trying to get people to be learned enough about the market so that they know what they're getting into.
Right.
And so, and they know how to make educated decisions. So same thing for me. I want people to know how to find the information they need to know what questions to ask.
Right.
So I'll tell you the absolute number one thing I would do if I were buying a house is instead of asking, is it in a good school district, I would go to the local high school,
Right.
or I would go on the local high school's website,
Right.
and I would find the document that's called school profile.
School profile.
So let me tell you what the school profile tells you. The school profile, every single high school in the country has one. And P.S., just because we're numbers people, there's 35,000 high schools in the U.S.
Ooh.
Just keep that number in your head. Every high school has a school profile. The school profile travels with the student's transcript to colleges.
Oh, interesting.
And what it does is it provides the context in which the student's performance can be measured.
Okay.
So what a school profile can tell you would be how many honors and AP classes are offered, what the student-to-teacher ratio is, what the curve is on grading. In other words, what percentage of the last year's senior class was in the 4.0 and above range, 3.75 to 4.0. It'll give you the distribution of the grades. Some school profiles tell you average or middle 50% SAT or ACT scores. So you can see what the performance of the kids that come out of this school
Got
is.
it.
And many times, if they have something to brag about, they'll give you a list of the colleges that their students have
Right.
enrolled in.
Right.
I would do that first.
So you would be, and this is, by the way, this is my aha moment for the day. That's fantastic. Is an absolute tool that now you guys can take and use. So you go to the school, to I'm assuming it's the high schools, right?
Yep, high schools, every high school.
High school, and ask for their school profile.
You can. Most high schools literally have it on their website. Sometimes it's hidden, but most.
Because they're not so proud
Well,
of it.
sometimes they aren't, but or because people don't know it exists,
Right,
and so
yeah.
they don't know that it should be made public.
Right.
So most of the time, it's either on the about part of their website or in the counseling office. If there's a part of their website that leads you to the counseling office, it should be there. And that is literally what colleges are looking at when they're looking at your kid's transcript.
Fascinating.
So you might as well know in advance
Right.
what the content. I mean, I make my 11th graders read their school profile. They don't even know what one is
Right.
until they talk to me. I make them read it and I say, this is the context in which you will be evaluated. How does that look to you?
Right.
Does that look right to you?
Right.
So
It's interesting because when I was going to be talking about later on about the things that the colleges do look at,
Yep.
and I was wondering, is there some sort of quote unquote context
That's it.
and to put it into, I was going to put it another way, but I didn't know that there's an actual document that
document, yeah.
literally is
Yep.
that does it.
Well, and the other thing that colleges do, most colleges, many colleges in the country, they divide their office into regional staff. And so there's usually a person in each college admission office who travels to every area of the country, almost every area. And their job, like I told you about what I used to do for Hopkins, their job is to go visit high schools. And their job is to really know what's going on at each high school.
Right.
So the truth is they really should understand the context of each transcript as it comes through the door.
Right.
But the school profile helps because, to be honest with you, college admission counselors are a very transient job.
Got it.
So they might have that job for 2 years and then they're gone. So the school profile can help fill in those gaps.
How much would you say that that context weights the student's performance?
Ooh, it's a really good question, and it depends. It depends on the kind of college you're talking about. If you're looking at ultra selective, top 25, it's really, really helpful for the college to understand the context of the school. And here's a really good example. There are public high schools in the Los Angeles area who do not offer AP classes.
Right.
So what does that mean? Is your child at a competitive disadvantage if they show up in an admissions office with only honors classes or no honors or AP classes? The school profile will let the college know, we don't do this. There might be a philosophical reason why, but we don't do this.
Right.
So now I forgot what your question was.
Well, no, it's just basically the weight that is put
Right.
towards this stuff.
Right.
And from what I'm hearing, it's such a case-by-case kind of thing that admissions person is sitting there
Yeah.
with it on the school profile on his desk with the actual person
Yep.
and going one by one.
Yep.
I this is completely I told you I wouldn't have any gotcha questions today, but I got this is a gotcha. Are there, like, I've known them on LinkedIn, right? They have literally, like, HR representatives for big companies have algorithms
Yeah.
that basically
Oh,
will
yeah.
filter out
Yeah.
Is there that kind of level of automation in admissions,
No.
or it really is one by one?
The word we use is holistic. It's very, very holistic.
Wow.
And there are some systems like the Cal State system. So CSUN and Cal State Long Beach and San Diego State. There's 23 in the Cal State system. It's an index-based system.
Right.
So that's not holistic.
Right.
The UCs are more holistic. They look at your grades, your transcript. They look at your test scores. They look at your extracurricular activities and leadership. They very much look at the essays, and they very much look at, every time I talk with a UC admissions person, they are very interested in the context, how you did in the environment that you're in.
Right.
And that's partially why it doesn't bother me what high school you go to,
Right.
as long as you're making the most
Of what you got.
using all the opportunities that you can. And I sort of touched on this at the beginning. If you can't find the classes that you're looking for in your school, there's community colleges right down the street, and
Yeah.
you're welcome to take classes there.
Right.
Colleges love that. That's going to look, you're going to look like a go-getter if you
Right.
go out and do that. So to be honest with you, if I were looking to buy
Yeah.
a house, I would look at the high schools. I would figure out what the closest community college is,
Right.
and I would figure out, how easy it is for a high school student to enroll at a class at a community college.
So you're saying that the community college is as almost as important as the school, almost.
I would say if the high school doesn't have everything you want it to
Right.
have, the level of rigor that you want it to have, then community
find the
college
rigor
is
elsewhere.
important. And also think about a target in your mind, right? When 27 kids from the same high school apply to the same college, they're compared against each other first. That's the center of the target.
Right.
But then, and this is part of where parents can't get it in their heads, that we got to look at a bigger pool, right? You're not just comparing yourself against the kids in your school. Go bigger. Go to your city. Go to your
Right.
region. Go to Southern California, right? That's really what you're competing against. So if you're a top student at your high school and you're taking all 22 AP courses, whatever, that are available, there's probably 8 other kids that are too.
Right.
So does it look better if you went out to the community college and
Do
took-
even more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, just an observation. So I've been involved in the alumni leadership for both of my colleges, my alma mater, Emory University and Pepperdine. And, I've, as a volunteer activity, I go to career fairs, right? So, or not career fairs, but the, college fairs.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm really fascinated with the next group of students, because I would say about 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, I would see more parents.
Right.
And I would see the parents coming up to the table and asking all the questions
Right.
and gathering the material and writing everything down, and their kids were very shy.
Yes.
Right? And they were playing on their phones or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I guess that's the helicopter parent type
Generation,
thing.
right.
But now it's really fascinating, because now I actually see the kids taking the initiative, and they're going up to the table, putting out their hand and introducing themselves
Right.
like adults, and they're asking me, talk to me about Emory's biochemistry department.
Nice.
And how are you ranked among others?
Well, let me tell you about Pretty Woman.
And I'm going through my packet.
Well, what's
and
your
I'm
gear?
like, let me see, biochemistry. What page is that on?
Something
I
about
said,
Rodeo
I'll
Drive.
tell you what. Write your information down. I will find the right person to help you with that answer. But I'm so impressed by the initiative. And what I see is if they're engaged in the process,
Yeah.
and they say they want to go to the school,
Yeah.
and they say that in the essay, and they make the admissions team know that, I think that really helps get a leg up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? If you kind of half-ass it and treat the school as a safety school,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel so good, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, the kind of general attitude I'm kind of hearing is that it's get in a house, and you can pretty much, if you're worried about the school,
Yeah.
there are things that can be done.
Yeah.
If you need to, because listen, buying a house is, like we've talked about, is a way to acquire wealth over time. Okay, and so if getting into a house that is a good investment decision for you, you can find ways to counteract any kind of negativity about the schools or whatever. It's not like, oh, it's a crappy school, my kid's not going to do well, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, if all you do is throw up your hands and, that's it, yeah, you're right. It's going to be terrible. They're going to go to that public school. They're going to have, 8,000 students to each counselor. It's going to be tough for them. It's going to be bad. But it's sounding more and more that there are options that can actually fill those gaps and those holes.
Right, but like Ron said, you have to be proactive about it.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's better that the students are being proactive about it. And I will tell you, to the parents listening to this podcast, admission offices do not want to hear phone calls from parents.
Right.
They literally do not want to talk to you. Whatever you want to know,
my kid. My kid.
Nope, tell your kid. You can dial the phone for them. You just can't talk because they do not want to talk to you. Yeah. And they will literally make a note of it, like Johnny's dad called, and they'll stick that in the file, and that's not something you want in your file.
So, all right, well, we've kind of discussed about how it's kind of tough to narrow down like a list of, because each kid is different, each school is different and all that. But let's say we're about to move into an area other than the, first off, what age are we really talking about here in terms of getting, like where we need to start thinking about this school is going to get them to this, to this, to that?
I mean, again, we start talking to parents when their kids are in 9th or 10th grade.
Okay.
We have like full hands-on programs starting first day of 11th grade. And frankly, we've backed it up to sort of before the summer before 11th grade because we want to help people choose the curriculum for 11th grade. That's like the hard year, air quotes.
Right.
We want to help them pick their curriculum. We want to help them figure out their testing timeline, their SAT and ACT timeline, because that's a huge source of stress.
Right.
Is, piling on that one more very important test at the end of junior year. So we talk with them about that. And we talk with them about summer activities, which is again, a way to augment what you're getting in school. You have to be a go-getter and you have to show them that you have certain interests.
So that's really the time around 8th grade is where you want to start steering towards a school that is going to make a difference.
Right. That's when you want to start thinking about it.
You want to start thinking about it.
And you want to start thinking about the financing part as well.
So worrying about what kindergarten your kid goes to and what kind of, it's generally, as long as you're keeping their minds activated in other ways and, experiencing other education, it's probably okay.
Yeah, I would say, just like anyone will tell you, any child development person will tell you, read to them, get them reading early, encourage, buy them lots of books. I actually gave a client advice a couple of years ago and he said, oh my God, that's brilliant. I didn't know it was brilliant, but he said to me, he really loves to read. He reads the same books over and over again. And I said, ooh, take those books away and buy him some new books.
Right.
And he said, oh, what a great, give them new challenges to do.
Yeah, keep it always new in front of them.
When you're talking about activities, it's fine if you shove a violin in front of them when they're 4.
Right.
Ask them if they still love it when they're 9. Ask them if they still love it when they're 13. Maybe they want to play the saxophone. Maybe they want to do something different musically. But I would say it's not... It troubles me when I see my friends shuttling their kids between ballet class and soccer and violin when the kid doesn't like any of those things. Right. So ask your children, what do you want to do? How do you want to spend your time?
And I think, and this is going to lead me to my next question, which is so on the most basic things that we can look for in a school that will separate the good from the bad. I mean, we're not, by the way, we're not advocating here sending your kid to some bad school just so you can get into a house. We're not saying that. But being able to make the distinction between what those things are, whether it is a good school that maybe is, has for some whatever reason doesn't have a good, greatschools.org rating, or there are all sorts of, it's holistic. There's all sorts of reasons why that might not be. So if I was going to go into a school to really get the skinny on what is its real condition, what are some the most basic things I'd be looking for? I
mean, definitely student to teacher ratio and student to counselor ratio.
Right.
Again, the school profile is going to have tons of this information. Where are the kids from this school going?
Right.
And that kind of goes back to the alumni thing. How ambitious is this school? How ambitious are the students and the parents who send their kids here?
Right.
So who are the kids your kid will be hanging around with?
Do you advise going and inspecting the schools?
I would.
Yeah.
I would if you can.
And I think you can kind of catch a whole attitude, the whole feeling when you arrive on there.
I mean,
does everybody have a bunch of get up and go? Yep. Are they, when you go through the hallways, a lot of cool extracurricular activities?
posters on the walls.
Right. Where it shows that there's an engaged, what's the word I'm looking for? Class. Student body, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I would make an appointment to tour a school, but also just what we do at college is we make appointments to tour, but we also stop random kids on the quad and say, hey, tell me about school. That's what I'm going to do Monday at Santa Cruz.
Right. I think also, hopefully someone in the area.
Right.
And you can actually have a conversation. It was like, it's rated as a 6. Well, I had it. My kids both went to, MIT,
right.
And they did just fine.
Right.
You have to start kind of, even I think there's a disclaimer on great schools where it's like, this is just a basic, taking the what's the word I'm looking for? The test scores, the standardized test,
testing,
and basically creating some sort of number attached to it.
And the thing is, we discourage people from looking at college rankings for this exact reason. It doesn't really tell you if your child will succeed in that environment.
Where are they going to thrive?
Right. So, rankings are fine, but they don't tell you everything you need to know. And I feel the same way about the high school score.
For kids that are very where they enter an environment and they're very experiential.
Right.
I mean, my personal experience, so I was born in Chicago, and I grew up on the North Shore in Northbrook, Illinois, which was one of the top school districts in the country. And my mom went to New Trier, and that was either I was going to go there or Glenbrook North, right? So I grew up in John Hughes. I literally grew up with John Hughes. John Hughes Jr. and I went to school,
really?
kindergarten together. Yeah,
that's it.
Oh yeah.
I'm taking back the Pretty Woman.
So I was destined
said
for
something
fame.
very interesting.
I was destined for fame. Do we have time? Do you want me to tell the John Hughes? We don't have time. Okay, that'll be another podcast for the John Hughes story.
I just want to hear all about John Hughes.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody else does. But.
Well, it's an interesting story, but we'll save that for another time. But anyways, so when we moved to South Carolina, which was not the highest ranked school district, I went to Beaufort County, right? And I went to Hilton Head Island, and I went to Hilton Head High, and it was one of the best ones in the state. But that was a concern. But what you're saying is, it's not necessarily if you go to a particular, whether you're in like the perfect school or the perfect school district,
right.
It's how you perform in that particular school.
That's right. It's what you do with where you are.
That's right. And something that I've noticed is that, the kids that are going to the college fairs, they're looking at it from not just what does the experience look like for that 4 years, but what is the alumni network look like? What are my chances for getting a job after this? And so they're not just asking. I actually had just one person that asked if the school was a party school.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Just a breath of fresh air. And I mean, we went to college in the 90s, and that was a pretty fun time to go to college. But they're actually asking very detailed questions that are not just the college experience, but having the degree beyond, and being part of that overall school and the community. Yeah. So those are all important.
Right. Well, we're going to be wrapping up here. So do you have any any parting advice that you would give, especially in terms of real estate? And,
yeah.
And, if someone's going to buy a house, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the decision where you go to college and the decision where you buy a house frequently comes down to financial. Yeah. And I would say, just like you said, you could spend that extra $900, but you don't have to.
Right.
There are things you can do to avoid that, and probably get better use of that money for your family for the longer term. And the truth is that it's the same with college. It's about what you do with the experience when you're there. And I wish parents, frankly, would worry less about the label of where they send their kids to school. The truth is, the average college graduate makes $1 million more over the course of their lifetime than the average person who doesn't have a college degree.
Right.
So, and that's not the average Harvard graduate versus the average CSUN graduate, right? That's the average college graduate. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter where you go to college and it doesn't matter where you live. It does.
Right.
But I think it's very personal to your family and their needs.
And I think it's a callback to what we were talking about at the very head of this podcast with the news about the corporations and all that taking over. it's so important for you guys to get in if you want to. If you want to buy a house, it's important for you guys to make this move. And if you have ways to take care of issues that you have in terms of, okay, I'd love to get in a house, but I can't get one in a good school district. Well, can you get in one that's good enough and supplement?
And make the best of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you can. The truth is you can.
The truth is you can. And I just want to go back to something that I mentioned at the beginning and add a very careful caveat here. When you're considering buying a house, you need to make sure that the house is definitely in the area of the school you want your kids to attend. School districts are constantly moving lines and districts, and so some of the lines are kind of oddball as it is.
Well, gerrymandered.
Yeah, exactly right. So before you finish your inspection period on the house, I would just make sure that you pay a visit to the school. That if you do, there's a school that you definitely want your kid to go to, and confirm that the house is in that school's area, because that would be a rude awakening for you to go all the way through escrow and then go to register your kids and then be told, oh, I'm sorry, your house used to be in that area, but then we moved the line across the street, so tough luck. It's all part of your due diligence, and you should be doing this before releasing the inspection contingency, and it's way too simple of a thing for you to do to not do it. So you'll kick yourself, or worse, if you go all the way through the process and find out that you missed it by that much. So just make sure you do it.
Or worse, you'll kick your agent.
Yeah, kick your agent. Please don't kick us. We're nice people. We only use the information that we think we have, so it's better for you guys to verify it yourself. So Evelyn, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I'm grateful for you coming by and giving us some just amazing information. Really, really fantastic.
Thank you.
Do you want to give your information so that everybody knows how to contact you?
Sure. It's magellancounseling.com is the website. And we have clients all over the country, by the way. I mean, we're local to LA, we're local to Boston, but I have a client in Idaho and a client in Connecticut. We're all over the place.
Great. And that contact information is there.
It's on the website.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them for us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Clarified Realty Podcast, all one word. You can email me directly at tom@clarifiedrealty.com. For more exclusive bonus content and advice between episodes, please check out our website, www.clarifiedrealty.com. Also on our homepage, you'll find links to helpful buyer and seller guides that will give you some great information for starting your home buying or home seller process. So check those out. I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram as well. My handle for all three of those are @Clarified Realty. I beg of you, please, please, please stop everything. Go and leave feedback and reviews on iTunes or in the comment section on our page. My amazing theme song, Hey Now, is from the band Wolf. That's Wolf with 2 Fs. And please go check them out and like them on SoundCloud. We'll also leave a link to the song in the credits if we can. They rock so hard, any college across the USA would be proud to have them in their marching band. And just a little disclaimer, Ron and I are licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate. My license number is 01715353. Ron's is
Guaranteed rate, NMLS 2611, NMLS ID 558706, California.
The advice we give is only for properties located in the state of California. For all other states, please contact your local real estate agent or real estate professional. And that's about it. Ron, you good?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. And remember, the greatest thing you can ever do is make someone feel at home. Take care, and we'll see you next week.